And this is a refresher. I don't know everybody here except for Meryl. I think I know everybody. And now I know you too, Meryl. And I don't think it's the first Pesach that anybody has done. So we're not teaching this class for somebody from scratch who's never, ever heard of Pesach, but it's more of a refresher. And I'm happy to teach it from scratch. I just don't think it's necessary. But please, please, please feel very comfortable with any questions, because sometimes we don't remember from year to year. Okay?
Thank you.
Please, I mean, this is the place to do it. That's why you came on. People see the screen? I can make it larger, right?
Yes. Yes.
How's that?
Good.
Okay, great. The first thing we're going to do is explain what is chametz, because the rest of the year, we know about keeping kosher. I mean, that could be another class. How do you keep kosher? But what is so different about these 8 days, and actually 9, because you have to start Erev Pesach? What is different in these 9 days that we have to separate and have everything new or different or kosher? So first of all, let's talk about what is chametz. Only these 5 grains can be chametz. Now, I want to tell everybody here, probably a lot of people here know this, but I am gluten-free. And because I became gluten-free about 9-10 years ago, I'll just go off into that. I discovered and learned all about these grains, because it's very hard for a person who is gluten-free to ever say mizonot, borei minei mizonot, or hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And why is that? Because these 5 grains that we're about to talk about are the only 5 grains that if you make a cookie out of them, they are borei minei mizonot. Or if you make a cracker out of them, or if you make pasta out of them, they're borei minei mizonot. You know all those gluten-free pastas that you see in the store now that are based on, chickpeas and quinoa, and I don't know what else. There's so many. Every time I go, there's something else.
Lentil.
No. What? Which one?
Lentil.
Oh, yeah, lentil. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like. I like for other people to taste it and tell me this is worth it, because I've thrown away a lot of gluten-free foods. But a lot of them are good, but that's not the point. The point that I'm saying is this is where I learned for myself, because out of these 5 grains, remember, only the 5 grains that we're about to look at, only those can be made into something that you either say borei minei mizonot, or that you say borei hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So borei minei mizonot is the bracha that we make on cookies, crackers, pasta. What else? Rekas. Any other ideas? Okay, you get the picture. Yeah, Fern, another idea?
Pizza.
Pizza, right? So pizza actually moves between one piece of pizza is mizonot, and if you have more than one piece of pizza, then you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, what we say when we eat a form of bread. I'm not exactly going to go into how you make crackers or how you make bread, but one nice way of defining it, if it looks like bread and acts like bread, it's bread, and you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, which is one way of defining it. I mean, it's a little more complicated when you're on an airplane and they say, no, we made this roll mizonot. But you're like, okay, but it looks like bread and acts like bread and tastes like bread. But I don't want to go into those laws. I'm just giving you an idea of where to understand it. So all putting kitnios aside, that will be in part 2. We're going to get to that. But just what is the biblical prohibition from the Torah? Are things that are made with these 5 grains that are not matzah. Only matzah can be made with these 5 grains. That is a really, really strong rule. Only matzah. Because when we have cake, or when we have, matzah balls, or if we knedlach, or if we have something else, it's never made with flour on Pesach. What is it made with? Not a trick question.
Potato starch.
But that's not from the 5 grains. I'm talking about something that could be mizonot, or it could be hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's never made with flour on Pesach. Only matzah is made with flour. So what do we do if we want to make a cake that's not potato starch? What do we take? You can unmute. It's okay. We're a small group.
Matzah meal.
Matzah meal, or cake meal, which is basically matzah meal ground up even finer. Because you're not allowed to make anything else on Pesach or use for anything else except for matzah because it'll become leavened, which I never knew what that word meant. Only Jews know what that word means because we're not allowed to eat that on Pesach. And the idea comes from leaving Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, and I don't know, they supposedly put their dough on the backs. That's the way they did it then. They left in a rush, and the sun baked it, and it baked it into matzah. And this is a way, no yeast, nothing else, just flour and water. And this is a way for us to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus, which is exactly what we're celebrating on Chag Pesach. Does that make sense? I want to give people an idea of what's behind it and not just a list of foods, yes or no, so that you understand where we're coming from. Does that make sense? Now, matzah, actually, it's interesting, just adding one little thing, and this has to do with what we say at the seder. So we just said, well, matzah is celebrating the fact that we left Mitzrayim. So in some ways, it's a free man's bread only because that's how the Jews left. But actually, it's also a poor man's bread because it's very filling. And it's often used like that because it's a very filling food. As a matter of fact, they serve it a lot in prisons. People, the inmates love it, and it makes them feel fuller. Some people know it can be constipating as well, but not for everybody. And as long as you eat it with the balanced diet, it's okay. All right, was that clear? What the 5 grains, was that clear, this idea about matzah versus anything made with flour? Those 5 flours, let's just go over wheat, spelt, rye, oats, barley. And some of those are considered fancy breads today. It used to be that anything made with barley was just for animals. But that's, today that could be considered a fancy bread or something. Okay, so that's the basis. That is the underlying basis for chametz, Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just see what else we have on something else, because it is a nice file that I did summarize things. So again, what are we saying? Food made with one of these 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, oats. There are two isurim, 2 prohibitions. One is that you're forbidden to eat it, and the other is you're forbidden to have enjoyment from food that is chametz. Like it could be that, I guess, oat is in something, or one of those 5 is in something that's not food, then you could have enjoyment, but you can't have enjoyment. How does that pertain to us, for example? How would you have enjoyment from food that is chametz, but you're not eating it?
If you gift it to somebody?
If you gift it, or if you give it to your pet, it's a big problem. If you have a pet, and pets, by the way, are a big issue. I don't know if anybody here has a pet, but pets are often very sensitive to change in diet. You can't just for 9 days give them other food. I've heard horrible stories about giving fish matzah and they died. I mean, it's awful. But even, dogs and cats are the most common, I guess, pets and fish or birds. You have to, birds often eat legumes, so that's usually okay. But if you just switch it randomly, it doesn't always sit well with them. They can actually really get sick. And then there are workarounds for that. But that's an example of food that is chametz that you're not eating, but you will still get enjoyment, hana'ah. Why? Because your pet will now be able to eat, not be hungry. Yes, Felice. Unmute.
You're still on mute, Felice.
If you're on an iPhone, just press the little icon, the red microphone you're pressing. I can't help you, but as soon as you get off, you're welcome, or write something in the chat. I'd be happy to answer.
Can't you unmute her as the...
Nope, I cannot unmute her. I can invite her, ask to unmute, maybe that'll help. Does that help you?
Is that better?
You got a pop-up, okay.
Okay, you hear me?
Thank you, Wendy, yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I was just thinking, let's say somebody owns a store, a grocery store, and they sell one of these 5 grains during Passover. Now they have like customers that aren't Jewish. It's open to anybody.
No, you're not allowed to. If you're a Jewish owner, you can't do that.
You have to, because I was getting hana from,
That's right, you'd be getting
person.
hana'ah, right. So maybe, look, I don't know about people who, right, I don't know about people who have businesses, what they do. Maybe they sell it to their partner who's not Jewish or somebody else. You know, if you randomly sell it to a non-Jew, they may not sell it back to you. So, you got to be careful, right? Yeah, but they're actually not allowed to. That's why after Pesach, we have to know which establishments are owned by Jews who didn't sell their chametz over Pesach, because you're not allowed to eat from it, because that is called chametz she'avar alav haPesach. Chametz where Pesach passed over it, or be about like the chametz was present during Pesach. That would be a way to say it.
Right.
Great question. Thank you. All right, back to, so we got that, right? Let's talk about what kosher foods are inherently going to be kosher lePesach. This is not a full list, but it certainly is an example of that. So fresh fruits, you know what? I don't even have to stay on here. First of all, everybody can have a link to this. It's on our website. It's available to anybody. What foods are inherently kosher lePesach? Come on, guys. Can unmute, talk?
Fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are inherently.
Except some vegetables or kitniyot.
We're talking about chametz. That's
Okay.
part 2. Wendy, don't jump the gun.
Okay.
We'll get to kitniyot in a minute. I'm talking about chametz. This is the biblical prohibition is chametz. Okay, let's stay with the biblical prohibition. So fruits and vegetables and milk products. Yeah, exactly. Meat, fish, poultry, tofu would and soy, although there's a problem with kitniyot, but we're not up to that yet. So that's an example of food that is inherently sugar, salt, condiments. Again,
Sugar, salt, right. Pepper, spices.
Right. Most of the spices, not condiments, spices, correct? So spices are inherently, unless they are kitniyot, but we haven't spoken about that yet. Okay. There are links on it and many of our files and on our website for a short list of foods that will not need kosher lePesach supervision certification. For example, things like sugar and salt. So as long as they're kosher, because they're, I mean, I don't know for sure, you have to look up the list, but in the list of foods that, we can open it just to get an idea of it. So just a minute, like Star K, it's very nice of the big organizations that, the bigger organizations, but
Oh, wait, something happened here.
it's one of them. This is the OU. So OU guide also has a list, certified products that do not need OUP. So there's a whole list of them on pages, so many of them. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what's in them. So it's from page 70, I mean, it's like 10 pages of it. So let's, for an example, baking soda has a list of them. I'm not talking about cleaners and detergents. Those are not food, so I'm not sure why they put them in. But Hershey's cocoa powder, because there's nothing in the cocoa powder in Hershey. There's no additives. That's usually the problem. Things that are plant-based, that are not legumes, that are not kitniyot, things that are plant-based, the only issue usually is if there are additives. Because if there are additives or if they're processed. Because, so for example, regular coffee, no problem. That's kosher lePesach without needing supervision. But decaf does need, because something in the decaf process may include either kitniyot or chametz. I don't know. I'm not a part of that. But those are examples. And then what else, for example? Egg products. So there are many egg products also, in addition to dairy. Eggs by themselves are not chametz, but there's a problem. They suggest that you get them before Pesach, because sometimes they come out with chametz around the egg. Like sometimes there are pieces of it. Maybe that's the issue for it. Fish, fruits and vegetables, juice and juice concentrate. So again, if it's wholly juice concentrate, that shouldn't be a problem, right? Because we said fruits and vegetables are inherently kosher Pesach. Nuts, there are many nuts, again, putting aside kitniyot. Nuts, also, they're plant-based, so they're also kosher Pesach. There's certain kinds of olive oil, extra virgin, that do not need, and many more like that. You can find them in the OU, the Star K has, the CRC. We good with that? Just going step by step here. mean, obviously the easiest thing is to go, to Riverdale Kosher Market and just buy from their Pesach store. But sometimes it's more expensive, or you had things at home that were unopened and you wanted to use them, or you like shopping at Trader Joe's. So you do have to check. You don't always know, but there are a lot of resources to check. So for which food items need special kosher Pesach, you can go to all of these and find what needs and what doesn't need. Now, there's another special category. Which food items may be purchased before Pesach, but not on Pesach, without a kosher Pesach certification? Because like milk, somebody here asked about dairy products or about milk. The problem is that if there was some sort of chametz that somehow came in it, it shouldn't be, but it could be. If you buy it before Pesach, it would be nullified, batel, because it is less than 1/60th and it's in this liquid form. Do people understand that concept? Certain things that should not have anything there, the milk, the process of milk should not have any chametz in it, but it could have. So what we say is plain milk, if it doesn't have kosher Pesach supervision, make sure you buy it before Pesach so that in case, and milk should last all of Pesach, you could buy enough. If you don't have the kosher Pesach, we live in Riverdale, most of the people here, and it's easy to find many things with kosher Pesach. But he lives in areas like this. So if you live in a place where it's hard to find it, or you like a specific milk for some reason and it doesn't have it, as long as you buy it before. Only plain milk, I don't even know if it covers lactose free, because I think lactose free may also have a certain
chemical.
Yep, I'm not sure about that. Like each question has to be addressed separately. Okay, what is it about quinoa? So any thoughts? What have you heard about quinoa? Quinoa over the years?
That it was kosher Pesach, but it's very hard concept to accept somehow.
So I think that so the establishments had trouble with that for a while. Like, wait a minute, it looks like a grain, it feels like grain, but actually it's not. The big question was not whether it was chametz, because it's not. We know only the 5 grains, make that really clear. Oats, spelt, rye, wheat, and barley. But they said maybe it's kitniot. Turns out it's not. So we haven't discussed kitniot yet. We're about to get to that. But here's the thing. Quinoa on its own, if you say it's kosher Pesach, what if it doesn't have kosher Pesach supervision? And you bought it, you were in a store and you bought it and it was cheaper. So you have to buy it before Pesach. You actually have to look and separate to make sure there's no little pieces of something else that came in, separate them out, and then you're good to go for Pesach. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Quinoa is really nice, by the way, if anybody wants. I have a great recipe for quinoa soup. It's so delicious. And it's really filling. So we use it on Pesach. I like quinoa best, by the way, in a soup. That's just me. Nuts and seeds, if they are not roasted, unblanched, they have no additives, they're just raw, they don't need kosher Pesach supervision because nothing has happened to them. Nobody's processed them. And tea and coffee, if they're unflavored and not decaf. All right, now we're going to get into the world called kitniot. Somebody once said, I heard somebody say that Pesach has become, instead of a chag about chametz, it's become a chag about kitniot. Because nobody eats chametz if you care, and all of the kosher Pesach supervision doesn't allow you to eat chametz. But which kitniot do you eat? Is it kitniot? Isn't it? So it's a little sad for me that it's moved out of the realm of the biblical, and really, honestly, the Sfaradim, the Sephardic communities who never took on themselves this issue of kitniot, it's just much easier. It just is. And I always wonder, did God really? Is that what God wanted when God set up Pesach, that it would be so stressful, right? I mean, I remember my children did not like potatoes, and they did not particularly want, I don't remember what else there was, but they really loved rice, and they missed it on Pesach. Usually you say, you can do without it for 8 or 9 days, which is true, but they liked pasta, which they couldn't have. They were not potato lovers. And rice just would have made my life much easier and their lives. It just was hard for them. I mean, obviously I found food for them. One of my goals in life is to make sure anybody in my home is not hungry on Pesach, before Pesach, because people have really honestly, people have like PTSD from growing up in a home where either Pesach was about if you're hungry, eat matzah. Or the week before Pesach, there was no food, and I just never liked that. So that was important to me. So what is it about kitniot? What is it? Anybody know? Anybody want to share? It's okay. I don't mind sharing. What is it about kitniot? Among Orthodox, Ashkenazi, and some Sephardic Jews, by the way, not every Sephardic community is the same. For example, Moroccans, the Moroccan community, I know because my neighbor is Moroccan. She said they eat everything, but not rice. The custom during Pesach is to refrain not only from products of these 5 grains, but also other grains and legumes. Traditions of what is considered kitniot actually varies from community to community, but generally include corn, rice, peas, lentils, and beans. Many mustard also. Many also include other legumes such as peanuts and soy in this prohibition, but not everyone. We are very strict. We in America, by the way, are very strict on kitniot derivatives such as oils and food stabilizers. But in Israel, it's really changed. First of all, over 50% of the population is from Sephardic background. So they eat kitniot, or they eat some variation of it. And as a matter of fact, for a long time in Israel, they didn't mark on the food products which had kitniot and which didn't. So people coming from, right? People coming from the US where it would only get an OU hechsher if it didn't have kitniot, didn't even occur to them to look in the list of ingredients. Now it's not like that. Now you have to mark le'ochle kitniot bilbad, only for those who eat kitniot, okay? Now kitniot, yes, Fern.
So a funny story.
Yeah.
Last Sunday we were in Brooklyn, and we were in the Syrian neighborhood, which is like, if those of you who know Brooklyn, it's like Ocean Parkway and Avenue U, Kings Highway, that neck of the woods. So there's a bakery that we used to go to, and I still go to, called Mamsura, who makes kosher for Pesach, delicious, delicious things. This year she's not making it because she had a different hechsher before. Now she's under the OU, and it's too expensive to switch everything over for kosher Pesach. She's not doing it. So some of the other girls in the neighborhood said to me, but a bakery from Deal, New Jersey, because that's the Syrian community in the summer, opened up a pop-up. Go check it out. The stuff looks amazing. I go in, everything looked amazing. Everything had sesame seeds. Every single thing had sesame seeds. I said, I can't eat it. She goes, why not? I said, because I'm Ashkenazi. We don't use sesame seeds. So it becomes a problem when you go into these communities where they take it for granted, and you really have to look with a magnifying glass at times what you can and what you can't eat.
Right. And the Syrian community is somewhat insular, so they may not have even they may not be so aware of what the Ashkenazi hold, right? Whereas we're very aware of it, yeah. So we came from the sages worrying that people, for example, theoretically, according to the Torah, you could have cornmeal or corn flour or cornstarch or bean flour, but it could look like regular flour. And I guess our sages were worried that people were mixing it up. And some of the things make no sense to us, like who really has green bean flour, or, but once they set up this strong edict, I would say, it's very hard to unroll it. But in Israel, it has become extremely common for Ashkenazim. First of all, there's a lot of marriage in between the Sephardic and Ashkenazi community. And I want to say pretty much everybody who marries somebody Sephardic who came from Ashkenazi just takes on their customs, whether it's the woman or the man. They just take on the other one. You don't have to take the man's custom. You can take the woman's custom. And a lot of my nieces and nephews have that. And therefore there's become so many people from the Ashkenaz community who also eat kitniot. Not everybody, and the more ultra-Orthodox don't. But in many of the standard, straight, modern Orthodox, or what's called modern Orthodox in Israel, Zionistic, they eat kitniot derivatives. So they won't eat rice, and they won't eat corn, but they'll have corn oil, or they'll buy, milk products that have stabilizers, or any product that has, or cakes, that have in it, some sort of kitniot oil, where you don't see that it's kitniot. And this is just across the board. It's become more and more and more and more prevalent. And it's really interesting for us in America, because we're so not used to it, it feels like, oh, kidneyot, it's like chametz. So guess what? Kidneyot is not chametz. That is really important for us to remember. You don't have to sell rice or corn over Pesach. You don't have to eat it, but you could keep it out theoretically if you wouldn't eat it. Kidneyot is not chametz, and I think that's what bothers me is that people, out of ignorance, not that it's their fault, because you go, oh, it's kidneyot, I can't eat it. So they don't really understand that there's a huge difference. Kidneyot are not chametz. We do not need to sell kidneyot. I mean, it could be it's in your closet where you're selling chametz if you do, but there's no need to. And kidneyot are only forbidden to be eaten. If you want to use it for anything else, that's not a problem. Like, I guess somebody asked me about using certain oils that came from kidneyot and as on their skin for a skin disease or skin something ailment, and that's not a problem. All right, is that clear to people about kidneyot? Is that? Now I want to say that because vegans now call plant-based diet, that is the new term for vegan, much fancier, plant-based diet, which I respect, I have no problem with that. Often they have a lot of trouble having protein on Pesach. So they could have quinoa, they could have nuts, but it's still hard for them to get, I'm not sure what they use during the year, maybe, I guess, kidney-based products to get the protein and to feel full. So there's a lot of people who allow a lot of, Pesach, halachic decisors who's like, you can eat kidneyot because you need it in order to be full and not to feel deprived, and your body would just be craving food for these 9 days. So that already teaches us, that already tells us that it can't be that it's the same level of chametz. You'd have to be really ill if you really needed chametz. You can roll back anything, right? Our lives, our health are the most important thing. But we wouldn't just roll back chametz stam. And I'm not saying vegan is stam, but it's not like vegans can now have chametz. They can have kidneyot. And
But not rice,
Yeah, why not? Why couldn't they have rice?
Because I have a 12-year-old grandchild that only eats pasta and bread a whole year. So Pesach, she's really,
Yeah, but that's
That's a
not
hard
vegan,
one.
but that's a different reason. I'm talking about somebody who's vegan who can't get, I mean, she can't
She
eat
doesn't-
no protein at all.
she
That can't
doesn't-
be. She doesn't have
She
peanut
eats-
butter or cheese on the bread.
She's not a big cheese person. She eats,
bread and pasta. No, nothing.
no, she eats harv cholent, which is beans and barley.
Okay, great. So she has things that fill her up and give her protein, but she can't have barley.
Barley,
That's
no. But could she have rice and the beans?
well. So that's a specific case. So if she doesn't have anything to eat, then we could talk about it offline. How's that?
Okay.
What did she do every Pesach until now?
I think she got an okay from Rob Stephen to have beans.
100%. That's what I would probably
Yeah.
say too. So when that
Yeah.
continues, that hasn't changed. Unless her diet expanded, that wouldn't change. So she's like vegan in the sense that she's so limited for whatever reason.
Yes.
She doesn't eat dairy, she doesn't eat meat, she doesn't eat chicken, she doesn't eat nuts. She doesn't have an easy way to get any protein
Right.
or enough
Right.
protein.
Milk. The only protein she gets. is
Okay,
from
how
milk.
much? Okay. There's
Yeah.
only so much milk you can drink.
Milk you can drink. Right.
No, 100%. She should have kidneyot. I agree with that. 100%. Okay. So great. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
you.
But rice isn't actually going to give her protein. So I don't know if there's a reason specifically, unless she literally is starving, like she really has nothing to eat. But you could make like Pesach rolls that are tasty and that she could eat, no?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So she doesn't need the
think of
rice, but
that.
the Pesach rolls don't have protein. So we don't want to make somebody sick. You don't have
Well,
protein.
she doesn't matter. She doesn't eat protein a whole year and she's just
Well,
very
she eats
skinny.
beans. She eats beans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's protein.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be different kinds of protein. Just have to have
Right.
protein.
It's enough
Eat
protein.
protein every day. You can eat peanut butter and jelly every day and get your protein. That's fine.
right. That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's somebody in my home who eats peanut butter and jelly every day. It's not me. Okay. Non-food items. So Again, these are many, and you can see in the OU booklet. If you don't have an OU booklet, you should get one. We have at the Bayit. It's amazing. I mean, really, you have to give the OU a lot of credit. I have 3 in my home. I can bring back a couple of them. But these are things that don't have chametz on them, don't have kitniot, even though some of them at least might be used with food, like cheesecloth. So theoretically, it could have some, I don't know, some layer on it that added a little chametz that we don't even know about, but they determined that it's not an issue. We do not require non-food items to specifically be kosher l'Pesach because they're not edible and therefore do not fall into the category of what is forbidden on Pesach. Remember what we said? Only 2 things. No, not that. Forbidden to eat and forbidden to have enjoyment from food that is chametz. So if it's not something you can eat, right? But if they knew, for example, that tinfoil had something chametz on it, and if you put it in the oven with food, then that chametz would go into your food. That would be a problem.
So what about forbidden to own?
Well, if it's not edible, Wendy, you can own it. But the question is if they checked into it. In other words, only if it's something that's used with food and let's say with heat, they would even check it out. If it's not used with suntan lotion.
I'm not talking about the foil. I'm talking about because you said the category of, what's forbidden to eat and what's forbidden to derive hana'ah.
Only from food, hana'ah from food, Wendy.
But we also
no, you shouldn't own it. You shouldn't. In other words, you have to sell it over Pesach.
Right. Okay, that was the.
Yeah. But like suntan lotion, you're not eating it, so there's no need to check. The only reason with tin foil you'd have to check is because if they smeared it with something that had kitniot or chametz on it or lard, obviously wouldn't even be kosher then. And you don't always know, right? It's only the people who look into the manufacturing. But suntan lotion is never used with food, as far as I know.
Foil, most wraps, most like foil and things like that, they all have an OU on them now.
Correct. No, 100%. So first of all, they need an OU to make sure they don't have any tray products.
Like,
but then
I think of that more like with laundry detergent and
laundry detergent is not, you're not eating it, you wash it. And even dishwasher soap, you don't eat it. It's not edible.
But if it had an actual let's say it had some meat, some non-kosher derivative in it, and you're washing your dishes, then aren't you then transferring that onto your dishes?
It is not edible. It is not a problem.
You're washing it off anyway.
I certainly hope so. Here, let's look at that to see. Bags, cardboard. Let's see if they put in deodorants, cups, cupcake holders, dishwashing detergent, detergents, glass cleaners, hair removal, things like that. Scouring pads and powders, don't need. Laundry detergents. So it doesn't say dish. I don't think that we hold that you need it, even for soap for the dishes, because it's not edible. But I
the
don't.
funny thing is 99% of them have an OU on it anyway. So it's almost a moot point.
No, that would be the question you were saying about chametz, but again, you wash it off and it's not edible. So I just don't see the issue with them. Look, this is also from previous years. I could look in the OU to see, but we go according to the most lenient of the OU, CRC, and Star K. So I can look that up, but as far as I know, it's not a problem. Okay. New toothbrushes are a must. Why?
Chametz gets on them.
Yeah,
What?
because the old one
like
full of chametz.
it's really hard
Chametz
to,
gets.
right? I mean, you'd have to like bleach it or something. And why would you do that? If you really just bought a new one and you just used it for 2 weeks, put it away and just put it away with your utensils and take it out again after Pesach, but start a new one on Pesach. So there are so the problem is that you actually do swallow a little bit of the toothpaste. Not everybody. Some people are like, not a problem. It's not really considered food. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be kosher Pesach. The most it could be is kitniot and you're not eating it. But a lot of people like to have the kosher Pesach. You can look up for every year what's what's kosher Pesach for that year. All right. Here's a question. What about medicine? Any thoughts? So here's a really good rule. If it's swallowed with a pill, that is not considered food, because swallowing something without chewing, it's
not eating.
well, that's not exactly true, because theoretically you could take a cup of soup and that's also not chewing, but it's not considered achila when you swallow a pill. You drink water, but it's coming down with the water. It's not considered achila. So any medication that you have or vitamins that are just a pill to swallow, that's no issue. You don't need to get it. The problem is if you're drinking something or chewable, like I use the Viactive chewable calcium chews, which also have vitamin K, vitamin D, because I can't tolerate the pills, the calcium pills. So those don't have a hechsher. They probably have kidney, and those you chew. I mean, it's like a chocolate chew. So those, because they don't have a hechsher, I can't use them on Pesach. I don't have a kosher Pesach hechsher, so I can't use them on Pesach. So I asked my doctor, and he's like, it's not a big deal if you'd skipped it it's not even 8 days, it's 7. Because Erev Pesach, I eat one. And then the last day of Pesach at night, once Pesach is over, I eat it again. So it's only 7 days. And he said, that's not a problem. But you have to check if you have a medication that's chewable or drunk that doesn't have kosher Pesach supervision, and you need to take it on Pesach, you have to check with the rabbinic authority or check, online or something first to see, and to check with your doctor. Could you skip it? If you can't skip it, see if there's an alternative. If there isn't one, you really just have to check it out. Okay. Every case is a case that you have to check out separately. So that's the general rule about medication. Obviously, we'd be more lenient about medicines containing kidney oat, especially for children. Very often the liquid, whatever you give kids, ibuprofen, Motrin, that often has some sort of kidney oat base. We are very lenient on that because it's for medicine, which you need. And Star K, ibuprofen, okay. Vitamins, again, non-chewable is not a problem. So it's exactly what we said. Pet food with only kidney oat is not a problem at all. But if your pet requires or will only eat a chametz diet, then you can check with someone on the rabbinic team, because generally we just sell our pet as well as the pet food. So then even though we're feeding the pet, it's as if we're feeding somebody else's pet, not as if we are. Cosmetics, as with other non-food products, there's no problem owning and using whatever cosmetics you have. I know that in the more right-wing communities, they say you have to have special lipsticks, but it's just enough to inspect your lipstick to make sure there's no food on it, or, taking a tissue and wiping up the end. That's the only possibility. You don't actually eat the lipstick, but theoretically it's possible a teeny bit of chametz came on it. And that's pretty much the summary of what we eat and don't eat on Pesach. But I'd love to hear questions now. Any questions specifically relating to food, but if not, we could talk about other things.
The Eastern European concept of gebrucht versus non-gebrucht food.
Great question. People here know what gebrucht is? Gebrucht is taking any matzah that you have, right? Of the matzah, only of those 5. Like I have shahakol matzah that's made of potato starch that I use as a cracker. Anybody can use them. Very convenient. It's also all year round for gluten-free people. So that's not an issue, because that's like having the potato starch cooked cakes. But if you have matzah meal, remember that's ground up matzah. Remember, we can't use flour from any of those 5. Right, thank you, except for ground up matzah. So there was a belief at some point that even though it's ground up matzah, maybe even though it was baked, it's really scientifically not sound, but that became the prevalent custom in many, many communities. The more right-wing you are, the more prevalent it is. And they said, oh, we can't have any matzah, not just matzah mel or break up matzah. Maybe there's a little piece inside the matzah that wasn't baked. And then if we put it into our soup or into, milk for cereal, maybe it'll become chametz. So that's what's called gebrucht, which I guess means something. I don't know exactly what it means in Yiddish. In Hebrew, matzah shvoya means matzah that's
Soaked.
So, thank you very much.
Soaked. I think gebracht means soaked also.
So that's what it means.
So
Right. So,
mixed with water.
right, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I think mixed with water, I think.
Well, it doesn't have to be water, any liquid.
Or any liquid, okay. Yeah.
By the way, the matzah that we eat, unless you need a special dispensation, like people who can't chew regular matzah, we only do flour and water. We don't do with fruit juices, which makes us soft, or egg matzah. That's not accepted on Pesach for us. It's called matzah ashira, a rich matzah. There is a leniency for people who can't have regular matzah for whatever reason. So you have to ask the rabbinic authority if you have a problem with that. So what is your question, Meryl, about gebracht?
You know, I come from a Hasidic background, you know, 2 generations back. Obviously, I'm not in that community, so I'm always ambivalent about, am I allowed to use gebracht? You know, is there a halachic, is it custom versus, is there a halachic issues behind it, I guess is the question.
I would say that if you would like to make the switch, then you should do what's called the hatarat nidarim. You should dissolve that vow. There's a certain nasach, there's a certain formula to say, but you do have to say it in front of 3 men, meaning 3.
Okay, I guess I'll stick.
Mitzvah and older. And if you don't do it before Pesach, then you can do it before Rosh Hashanah, but you could just get any 3 men together. It could be even that they're related to each other or even related to you, right? You could get a grandchild, a niece, nephews, whatever, but it has to be men because they're considered dayanim, like the judges. And it's in a siddur, you can find it online. And basically you want to say, I'm ready to give up this custom, but it was such a strong custom in my family and I never assumed I'd give it up. That's basically what it's based on. If you do it 3 times and you don't expect to give it up, you actually should do a hatarat nidarim. You should do an absolve. You should roll back or absolving yourself of that particular custom. I mean,
I may not, but it's nice to know that there's an option. It's more really for my grandchildren than it is for me.
why is it for your grandchildren? They do hold?
They do hold because my daughter holds, and
Then you should hold just so that they'll eat by you.
Oh, right.
I mean, that's important if it's easier. I mean, you
No,
could,
no, I want them not to have to hold because it's the same grandchild that's such a difficult eater. So I thought
but
maybe.
that's something that your daughter has to
do, right, not
agree
me.
to. So if she
Yes.
wants to have that conversation about whether she can roll it back or roll it back for her daughter, then that's a good conversation to have.
Okay, thank you.
But that has to, she has to be, of course, once your granddaughter is 18 or no, actually 12 in this case, but because she's bat mitzvah, but I don't know how comfortable she is. She could learn the halacha with someone and decide that she would go, but that's the whole thing about tradition. But if she's really hungry or she has trouble eating, that's a good reason to roll it back. But then they need to set aside certain dishes for her because people who eat who don't eat gebracht won't eat the dishes. Not hard. I mean, you can do it. You can just get her a set of dishes of 1 or 2 and a pot for her, right? Or a baking thing. So it's a little complicated. As she gets older, she can decide on her own.
Whether she wants it. Yeah, I'm not going to change. I'm an old lady and I have no problem eating everything else. But thank you.
I always like to say older, not old.
Okay, older.
Yeah, older. I'm older. I don't need to change, or you could.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions in this group about food, Pesach foods that I can be helpful at? Wendy?
I have an almond milk question.
Yeah.
So in the OU book,
Yeah.
I couldn't find toothpaste, but I don't know if you have the book with you. On page
I do.
112.
100 and
On
what?
page 112. Like I was looking for in the gray pages, where it's like if it just has the OU but not the OUP, it's fine. And I didn't see it. And I know there's certain things like if you buy before Pesach because of Bittul, and I always thought almond milk was in that category, but I did not see it there. But the only thing I do see is at the end of page 112, it says milk substitutes only in shelf-stable, non-refrigerated containers.
Wait, but 1 second. Look at the top. The product brands listed below are not certified kosher l'Pesach. Nevertheless, The OU has identified these products as halachically acceptable for infants and for those who are ill.
Right.
So,
And then this thing, hopefully, I know.
I mean, there
Yeah.
should be almond milk that's kosher l'Pesach.
That's-
No?
And it's interesting, it says Almond Breeze original, but in the shelf stable versus I typically buy it in the one that's in the refrigerator.
Right,
So-
right. But again, this is only according to the OU, especially rice dream and soy dream are kidney oat. So if
That's
you
that-
eat kidney oat, that's great.
Right, which I don't. But the almond milk, if you read to some of a number of them, all it contains is almonds.
Did you, right, so that sounds like, but I don't know how it's processed. That's the problem.
It must be
And
something.
you should look also at the Star K and the CRC because we look at all three.
Right.
And this is OU only talks about OU products.
Wow.
Tend to be they tend to be the most strict. So Rev Stevens' approach and my approach is that we look at all three and we take the most lenient because they're all reliable. So we don't have to take the most stringent. I mean, you can if you want to, but if somebody's asking us, we rely on all of them. They're all good hechsherim.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Robert Moshe, how about you? No, no questions? Alfie or Judy, Nancy, any questions?
No.
Are good?
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
You're so welcome. It was so nice to get together with everybody. Be well, everyone.
Okay.
Chodesh
Thank
Tov,
you.
just started Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
Yes,
And
Chodesh Tov.
Shalom.
Right.
Thank you. Shalom.